Tanya, welcome to the Z Marketing Podcast. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, you wrote this new book, Get Off Your Mask, introducing B2A business to anyone,
Hmm.
marketing reimagined.
Yep.
Maybe before you go into that, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do.
Sure. So 20 plus years, I've been in the business. I started my career in retail, in apparel retail. So I worked for brands like Land's End, LL Bean, Chico's, Jockey International, L Brands, and eventually when marketing became more robust and more, transformational, and there were so many different parts to it, I moved into marketing. But my domain expertise was always about product, always about driving revenue, driving customers, new customers, as well as lifetime value customers. And so felt like a very seamless transition for me because I could be smarter, not just from a funnel perspective, but really thinking about the buyer from beginning to end and thinking about driving the revenue because I was always responsible for the P&L. And so I moved into B2B, B2B2C, and then most recently I did a B2B SaaS startup that was based in Chicago for about 5 years.
That must have been a big transition, not to get way off topic, but going from big brand retail to a SaaS tech platform. How would you say, in one situation, you're doing what most marketers would call B2C, business to consumer,
Mhm.
consumer brand. With the SaaS platform, probably a lot more B2B, business to business. But of course, your whole thesis, B2A, business to anyone. Was that thesis born out of, comparing your experiences in these different companies?
Yes, absolutely. So being in B2C apparel and those principles, omni-channel, tailored messaging, human connection, as I mentioned earlier, always touching the buyer from beginning to end and thinking about the customer from beginning to end, buyer-led, not product-led. And so when I moved into B2B SaaS, it was very different. It was product led. It was very segmented, very siloed within our infrastructure. We had this funnel that we were fixated on, and I never once ever heard us talk about the customer, the potential customer, potential buyer. And obviously, when you go into a new world like B2B SaaS, you want to get the lay of the land and, kind of observe and take a backseat approach to it. But as I started seeing some of these opportunities, especially now with AI, because we can, read and react and try things much more quicker and more efficiently, we started looking at things differently. We started breaking the silos down, started working collectively. I call it chapter 8 in the book. It's called the cross-functional champion. Really looking at the business holistically, not looking at it in segments, but really thinking about it from the buyer lens. And that was how we started our approach. Then we moved into omni-channel. Again, it's not linear today. We have four unique generations in the marketplace. All are very different. I'm Gen X, and Gen Z and millennials operate very differently than Gen X does and boomers. And so,
And millennials from Gen Z, very different.
exactly,
Speaking
exactly,
as the millennial.
exactly. So as a marketer, as a businesswoman, we need to think differently. And with this AI, as I mentioned, we have all these opportunities now to really get closer to the potential buyer. But what we've done and what I saw is we became so fixated on the numbers and the data, we never really thought about what can we do with this information? How can we get closer to our buyer? And that's where the curiosity creed, chapter 1, comes into play. We're asking, we need to start asking questions again and stop being so operational, stop being so transactional, but really thinking about trust, credibility, and engagement. And by doing what we did in the SaaS world with the startup that I was at, we started through the buyer lens. We started looking at the business nonlinear. We started messaging with more tailored content. And the funnel became was there, but we weren't so fixated on the funnel. We were really fixated more on the buyer. And we saw nice results, tightening up the sales cycle, better qualified leads, better lifetime value with the people that we were bringing onto the platform. And those are things that we really need to start lifting our head up and start focusing on and not making it so in the moment and making it so transactional.
Well said. And I think your thesis of being more human-centric, buyer-first marketing lines up a lot with mine and some other guests I've had on this platform, like our friend Mark Schaefer and Jay Bear and others.
Great.
One thing you said there, there's of course a funnel, but I think you nailed it when you said not being fixated on the funnel. And I think there's too many, I don't want to say, in digital marketing, where when I got into marketing,
Mhm.
it was already very digital, although I did work at a traditional. Um, and the beauty of it was that you could A/B test, you could split test, you could
Mhm.
track everything, which was so cool to me. Um, and as someone who started more in the creative aspects, copywriting, I loved that. But I also noticed that there are a lot of people there are a lot of people who are being just into the creative and not worrying enough like, does this actually sell any products? And they were not necessarily adjusting to the, data-driven approach to marketing. But
Mhm.
then you had people going the other extreme, I think, the last 10 years of maybe being too obsessed with funnels, and tools. And now there's a whole way more tools than ever before with AI. And maybe something's getting lost in the translation when it comes to the actual buyer and that making a human and emotional connection, which no matter how much technology is invented, I think is the best way to really make more sales and drive more loyalty and, as you said, lifetime value. Um, I guess what would you say? Um, in what way have companies become too obsessed with funnels and hacks and not enough with the buyer? And how could they do better at making personal connections with their target audience?
Yeah. Yeah. We've made marketing too mechanical. We're chasing the metrics. We're looking to check boxes off and build this customer journey. And that's really not how, that's not reflective of how people actually behave. As I mentioned, AI can help us move so much faster. But we're automating things, but with emptiness. We're not really taking the automation and saying, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean to our buyer? What does this mean to their pain points? How can we help solve them? How can we help them create efficiencies? What are the things that we can do to amplify that engagement that we want to make with this potential buyer? They need to start trusting us and looking to us from the lens of us being a credible brand to continue to be engaged with. And so I think we've got this fluff that we continue to like focus on, and we're really forgetting about the framework that actually moves people. And we're more fixated on moving the funnel, and we need to start changing the language of how we talk and making it more of a buyer first.
Well said. And I love what you wrote in your book um, that we've been trapped in these conventional categories of B2B and B2C, and obsessed with automation and optimization. And brands have forgotten that every decision, whether driven by logic or emotion, is ultimately made by a person. And I like that you also wrote that a person doesn't transform between like 9 and 5. They're the same human all day long. Now, just to get into that, I totally agree with that. My question would be, is there nuance though in the platforms? For example, of course it's the same person all day long, but are they maybe in a different frame of mind when they're checking their work emails or on LinkedIn
Right.
versus when they're doom scrolling on Instagram or TikTok? And
Absolutely.
and how can we address, I guess, the different sides of the same person, and of course tie it back to our offer and get the results.
Absolutely. People don't. we don't live in stages. We live in moments, and that's what we is most memorable. And so you're absolutely right. At 8:05, I might be like, I've got to pick up, I'm thinking I've got to pick up my daughter from soccer at 4 p.m. I've got to make dinner. I might go on Pinterest and see what kind of recipe there is. And then 8:15, I'm at my desk and I'm thinking about, okay, budgets are due, where are we at? And so that's where the nonlinear channel, omni-channel comes into play. We need to be in those places where the potential buyer is going to be and not think about it as an 8 to 5, but think about it around the clock. And that's where the different platforms can infuse content and talk to us in a manner that is applicable to whatever we're thinking and whatever we're doing. And so I think it's really important that we remember that because the buyer today is working 24/7 and it's not 8 to 5. It's all day, every day, but being in the right place at the right time, depending on what their issue is or what their search is, we need to make sure that we're there.
Yeah, you've got to, as your book says, get off your mass and meet your buyers where they're at. I think that's incredibly important. Um, so how can obviously we want to have keep the human element in marketing. And as you said in the book, marketing hasn't lost its mind, it's lost its nerve. How can we use AI tools, not to mention the whole bunch of platforms and the fragmentation of people's attention spans into podcasts and reels and streaming and everything else to make our workflow more efficient, um, but also kind of remain human. Like you said in your first answer, I think it's very important when you incorporated a lot of the ideas of your thesis, being more
Mhm.
human centric and not just being coldly just automated and optimized. Um, you were able to get better results and more customer loyalty. And for business
Absolutely.
owners, at the end of the day, some people may love playing around with technology, but the thing that really matters the most is the bottom line.
You bet.
So, in what way can we use technology to achieve those goals while remaining human, which, as you say, is also essential to driving more sales and loyalty?
Great question. And I look at the business and it's about the buyer and it's about driving revenue and being profitable. First and foremost, it's a mindset change. We have to start thinking differently. We need to start asking questions. The first chapter is the curiosity creed. One of the best quotes that I love in that chapter is, if you're interested, you're going to be interesting. And we've really lost that. And so that's where the operational piece comes in. We're so fixated. I can't tell you how many times I go on LinkedIn or I get an email and there's more software. It's like we're swimming in software today and trying to keep our head above water. And we're using this software so we can get so prescriptive with where the buyer's at. What is that going to do? What are you going to do with that information? And because we're so fixated on that, we're losing sight of really keeping things a little bit more simple and engaging with the customer. They don't operate in stages, like I said. It's more about signals. How can we provide them with resources and information and content that makes them feel like they're being seen and heard? Because right now, it's not. We're operating in B2B. I see it still from a very old playbook where it's sales led. We've got silos internally. We're fixated on the MQLs. We're not thinking about customer success. We're thinking about all new logos. And we just need to tear those silos down, start looking at the business holistically, knowing that we have a framework within each of our departments, but looking at it more collectively, looking at it more holistically. And I think that mindset is something that we really need to change. And we look at volume over the value. We look at sameness. That's the get off your mask. Like we need to be more specific with how we're targeting, what we're saying, and how we're providing those solutions and letting the buyer see that. And so there's not a one way. Like this book is not a here's the 10 tips and tricks on how to build a go-to-market strategy with, that's human centric. It's really getting you to think differently. It's getting you to be curious. It's really getting you to think about the human connection. What makes you tick is how I always ask myself, whatever makes me tick and engage, kind of play off of that, within your people that you're going after from a persona perspective. So, I think that's really what it is. It's really kind of thinking about how we can get closer to the customer, how can we get more engaged with the customer, using the data as a vehicle and a leverage to get us there instead of using the data as a vehicle to telling us what to do. It's completely different two statements there.
Yeah, it's a different mind shift, and like I think what you just said there is empathy. It's like
Mhm.
how do I feel? How would this, if I were the buyer, how would I feel about this message? And as you said in the book, marketers are drowning in data but starving for meaning. It's one thing to get all these numbers, but what is it telling us? What does it mean? Like um from this data, what can I now conclude about what matters to my customer,
Hmm.
and what they're looking for, what need in their life is my product or service fulfilling? Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, B2A, business to anyone, it's a fundamental reframe. It's a mindset, it's a method and a philosophy that's built for a world where everything is changing except there's one constant, and that's the buyer, people. And that's what we have to remember. And I think that's really crucial and important. And the noise that we're creating is not getting us where we need to get. We need to start providing finding more signals within our buyers, becoming closer with them by offering an omnipresence through our marketing efforts, by giving them the technology and the ability to do the research on their own time and start thinking again from how we can scale with that humanity as center and front, as we focus.
for sure. And as you say in the book, AI is not the threat. Emotional disconnection is, and buyers crave relevance, not robotic personalization. Because as you just said, you're at the end of the day, at least for now, we're not selling to robots. We are selling to people. I've often said people transact with people. And I love your B2A way of putting it, business to anyone. I remember a few years ago, I heard someone say B2P, business to people. Because yes, there are different nuances and context matters. At the end of the day, whether someone is in the workforce, you're selling to an office product, or you're selling something like fashion or jewelry, or to a
Yeah.
consumer, there's still that person, and that person, just because someone is at work doesn't mean they're not necessarily scrolling Instagram, right? Like doesn't mean um they don't want to be talked to in that human way, in a way that um no one wants to sit through your PowerPoint, right? Like
Exactly.
when they buy an LL Bean jacket, there's something, it speaks to them, like something about that brand, and about the look of it, that makes them want that. Um when I think in B2B, people get a little too logical, too rational. And of
Mhm.
course, you've got to justify the cost and P&L, and yes, it's going to give you the return, and here's all the features and case studies for sure. But I think when we think about from the B2C, or you call B2A, playbook about, hey, like, how can I get this person to just want to buy now and not say, oh, send me a proposal and let me look it over. If I can make my SaaS product just as compelling, just as speaking to the primal needs, fears, or aspirations of that person on the other end of the table or Zoom call, you're gonna have a lot more success. And I think that's why a lot of companies that are showing the more human side of their business, like on social media, are winning.
Absolutely.
How and you know, you talk a lot about how brands can win in this day and age. Um, what about, you know, you've mentioned in the book a few personal brands as well, like Taylor Swift. I've heard
Hmm.
like the Taylor Swift effect. I actually wrote something about this for a marketing course years ago. How she surprises and delights her fans. Sometimes she'll send them something, or you know, what are some lessons we can learn from either celebrities or icons, past or present, about how to remain relevant and make an impact?
Taylor Swift, think of what she did with her Eras tour. 2 years, $2 billion. Every night she would go to a different city and everything would be special and unique to that city. That is, B2A right in action right there. She's thinking about the human connection right there. You've got all of these girls who are screaming and jumping up and down and she makes it so specific, like they're the only person in the room right now that she's talking to. And that happened in an organic way. She was able to really connect with her audience, connect with the people, all different ages, and making them feel like they were seen and heard. And it's one of the strongest tours out there in terms of generating revenue. And she's an amazing icon. And look what she's done. She's got buyers, if you want to call them, uh, all different ages. I can go to a Taylor Swift concert with my daughters who are in their low 20s. I'm in my 50s and still feel the energy and the connectivity like Taylor's singing to just me. And that's what, is so magical. And I talk also about Steven Spielberg. He's in the book. This probably dates me a little bit, but the E.T. movie, um, when
Classic.
that came out, right? When that came out, he wasn't just telling a story, he was really creating this emotional architecture. When he filmed E.T., he shot it from the child's eye level. Why? Because he wanted us to feel what the kid felt. And that's intentional design. I think marketers need to bring more of that thinking into the room today. When we launched, for example, my career started in apparel. I was in charge of the swim department. We launched a mastectomy swimwear line back then. And it wasn't about the category expansion, it was about dignity. We listened to real women talk about how it felt to shop post surgery, and we built for that. Data is definitely helpful, but data doesn't inspire loyalty. Spielberg did. We did by listening to our customers at Land's End. And that's the mindset I really want more marketers to step into. Build for the emotion first, then optimize because that's when it will happen.
For sure. Yeah, there's much that brands and businesses can learn from these great icons of art and culture. And I think that, you know, a lot of times people will think, should we shoot the video horizontal, you know, vertical
Right.
or landscape? Is 30 seconds better or a minute and a half? Like what will get more clicks? And this is what the data shows. It says that best practices, it should be like, you know, 30 seconds, whatever. And I think what gets lost is like, what makes you want to watch a 3 hour long movie?
Yeah.
What makes you stop when you're scrolling? Um, when you're looking for something, are you know, what kind of word are you searching on Google, or are you speaking into you know, whatever voice, you know, Siri or whatever. There's not there. I think a lot of people don't empathize, or they don't think more about the long term of keeping people engaged. And I guess, creating that sense of magic. They're just kind of copying everybody else, thinking about best practices, how they can justify it, to accounting. And they're not necessarily thinking about the things that, when done by brands that are willing to be brave, are stickier and make a much, really stand out. And that's really the whole point of marketing, right? To be noticed.
Absolutely.
So maybe as we, start to close out, I'd love to, if you could summarize, obviously it's in the book and everyone should go get it. But the poise model, you describe it as a system for modern marketing leaders. Can you go into a little bit what the poise model is all about?
Absolutely. It's something that I've always operated. We just found a name for it as we were writing this book, and it's POISE stands for personalization, omni-channel, innovation, strategy, and EQ. And when you look at the halo, so let me just back up. So the halo is business to anyone, and then the principles, the pillars below that are poise. And if you think along those manners, regardless of B2C or B2B or B2B to C, the fundamentals of what we're thinking and doing, personalization, omnichannel, we're hitting all the right levers to be buyer centric, to have that customer centricity, to be more focused on what's in it for them, to look at the business model more holistically, breaking those silos down, not thinking about it in segments, but really fixing and having a shared insight. And I think that is what, ultimately we need to get the teams to start having that and weaving that through their methodologies and how they drive the business forward. And I think that's what I've learned from that is that when you have that kind of framework, you're focused on the product, you're focused on the buyer, you're focused on being innovative, you're focused on being personal, you're focused on driving revenue. It's all encompassing. And that's really where we need to be from a marketing perspective today. I feel like marketing is known for a funnel. And to me, marketing is the connective tissue to all of the departments, to the buyer, and helping us amplify and accelerate where we need to go from a business perspective and driving.
I love that. Can you just go into just the what each one stands for? And we can like,
Sure.
yeah. So POISE. What
So
does each one stand for, and break it down a little bit?
absolutely. So personalization, the first, right, is, I think we've put emails out there and we leave a blank space and it says, "Hi, Tanya, thank you for blah, blah, blah." That's not personalization. Personalization is doing some homework, understanding what the buyer, the potential buyer's pain points are, really putting something in the content that they can relate with. And so that's personalization. We need to do more homework. We need to be more curious, like we've been talking about earlier in this. Omni-channel is, it's really about putting ourselves, our messaging in the right places to our buyers and remembering that it's not linear anymore. We can't just send an email off, but again, talking about where the buyer is, they're not just operating as a buyer from 8 to 5, they're going 24/7. And so really making sure that our messaging is articulate and we're conveying the pain points and the solutions that the buyer's looking for. It's dynamic today. It's much more robust. And then innovation is being creative. Making sure the teams are looking at innovation collectively. Innovation comes from what you're seeing in the marketplace, but also hearing from consumer insight. And so what does that look like? I've worked at companies where we've been operating individually and we're not swimming together. And so really making sure that that innovation is coming through and that's your through line across all of the departments and that we're all operating in that manner. Strategy is what it is. Be strategic. Think about, again, a buyer lens. Think about their solutions, their pain points, what can make them feel like they're being seen and heard, what creates that credibility as a brand, what allows for them to trust you, and giving them the tools from an omnipresence to be able to do their research, learn about you on their own time. And so doing, videos that are available to them at 9 o'clock after they've put their kids to bed to watch a demo instead of requesting a demo. And then the last is EQ. It's just, human intelligence, really making sure that we are empathetic, that we are listening, and that we are a true partner and building a true relationship in every sense.
Well said. And I think especially what you're saying with omnichannel, obviously you have to maintain a coherent brand voice, and consistency. But, the days of just sending out mass emails or just putting up a Facebook ad and thinking they'll just give their email and opt into your funnel with and be remarketed are over. You need to be able to know how all the pieces work together and be present. They used to say it takes 7 impressions or something like that. Now it takes like 50 impressions, and they have to have a sense that you're everywhere, and you have to sort of integrate your brand into the nuances of each platform, whether it's a commercial on a podcast or appearing on a podcast or a LinkedIn post, or an email or an Instagram reel or Instagram story. Um, you can carry your voice through, but it has to be where people are at. Their attention's divided, and they're going to these different places, and they're maybe in a different mood, or there's a different culture in all these different areas. Um, and I guess, to leave off, what would you say is the mandate for marketing leaders today? What should CMOs, or agency owners, what should marketers right now be doing? What do you think is what should they be telling their teams to do more of?
I think we need to be the catalyst of this change and to, you know, s literally get off our masks and, turn it into, this real philosophy, which is, we've got to stop this defaulting, to movement without meaning. We've got to stop building campaigns that just check boxes and don't spark anything. Marketing that's performative, reactive, or fear-based, as I would say, that's mass marketing. And I wrote this book with my husband because people don't want that. That's not going to engage, they're not going to engage with that. They're not going to be receptive to that. And we need to start thinking really about how the teams can work collectively. And I think we are that cross-functional champion. We are that connective tissue. We are not just a funnel. We are driving new customers, lifetime value. We are identifying the pain points and the solutions. We are having a seat at the table with the executives, talking about revenue, talking about driving profitability and what those levers look like.
Yeah, what does it mean to be a cross-functional champion? I love that phrase.
Yeah, just respect of knowing what your finance person does, but having those walls down so there's fluidity. I think I like having diverse backgrounds. I think it gives people a voice that may be different and may think differently. And so oftentimes we get really pigeonholed into this is our space. I only know numbers. This is marketing. I know all marketing. You
Especially in
can't.
the corporate, yeah,
Exactly,
bigger
exactly,
companies.
exactly. So really respecting and having that receptivity, and giving them a voice too. They might have a great marketing idea that we might not have thought about, and vice versa when it comes to the finance. And so I think really being able to just really have that support and that listening skill.
Yeah, like I love I mean, two things about what you just said. I mean, I've had Dave Kirpin on this podcast a few times. He talks about the importance of social listening, listening to your customers, not just talking at them. But I mean, most of this of sales and marketing is really listening, not what you say, or how much you talk, but if it's relevant and resonant. And I
Absolutely.
think that listening to our customers, whether it's watching what they're tweeting and posting about, or just listening to them in meetings, or I think it's very helpful for marketers, like you said about silos. If they would actually talk to the salespeople or the customer service people who deal with the end customer every day, they would have radical insights that just a report, an analytics report doesn't tell them.
Absolutely.
They would know exactly what are the type of words they want to hear, or the words like I hear that word and I hang up. I don't want that, like I scroll past. Um,
Or think about the funnel today. After we pass the baton to sales, we shouldn't, be like, okay, we're done. We need to make sure we see it through with sales. And that's the support that a cross-functional champion person will do. There's no blame game. There's really about this autonomy and driving towards the collective goals together. And so, yes, we have our positions and our responsibilities, but I think a lot what I hear sometimes, is that, well, I got him the leads. It's up to him now, up to them now. And that's not the mindset that we should be having. Maybe it's not the right leads. Maybe we need to have a conversation. Maybe the sales needs to help us in building some of this collectively. So that's how I look at the cross-functional champion. I've been told that that's what I am in my early days of my career, and so we felt it was just really appropriate to give it its own chapter. It's chapter 8 in the book, and yeah, take a read. You'll love it.
Exactly. Yeah. And they think they're all Glengarry leads, if anyone gets the reference.
Yeah,
Great movie. And I think as far as being a cross-functional champion, it kind of also reminds me, Seth Godin says in Purple Cow about every aspect of your product or service has to have marketing baked in, meaning sensitivity to the end buyer. So talk to the engineer. Like the engineer knows how the person uses this product. They know the the fun the issues like where the person gets stuck or what what's clunky or what they're trying to do. It's not just about the tech or about the features. It's about the benefit. How is it going to improve the life of this person? And I think then reverse engineering that in your marketing messaging. I think that your book really lays out how to do that very well. And anyone listening, watching this podcast should definitely go to the show notes and pick up your copy of Get Off Your Mask, Introducing B2A Business to Anyone Marketing Reimagined by Tanya Thorson and Tony Thorson. Where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more?
absolutely. You can always reach out to me via LinkedIn, Tanya Thorson. I can also share my email address with you, Zev, and we can put that in the notes. Feel free to connect with me. I am very interested in hearing how people react to the book. It's a different read, and I hope everyone enjoys it. And I hope they learn something from it, and I hope that they can contribute to, giving feedback. I'm excited. Thank you.
Absolutely. All will be in the show notes. Tanya, thank you so much. I know that my listeners got a lot of value out of this and hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you.